Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a real honor to introduce Mr. Deepak Justine, known as DJ, a well-known corporate trainer, motivational speaker, and a filmmaker. As a corporate trainer, he has trained more than 1 lakh people across domains. Participants vary from new recruits to presidents and vice presidents of companies, radio jockeys, actors, doctors, dentists, software engineers. As a motivational speaker, he has delivered more than 1,000 motivational talks to diverse audiences. As a filmmaker, he makes educational films for training purposes, corporate films for commercial purposes, and general films for creativity's sake. He coordinates the entire process from conception to execution. He specializes in training modules, communication, leadership, attitude, assertiveness, creativity, life skills, induction, motivation, personal branding, and train the trainer. So it's my pleasure to have DJ on board. DJ, over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your DJ on the house, about to take your Friday afternoon and set it on fire. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before you get carried away, DJ is my name. It is not my profession. Professionally speaking, I'm a professional speaker, which means I speak for a living. I do keynote addresses, motivational talks, corporate training. Thank you, Uzma, for that fantastic introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dr. Sam, for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure for being here. Okay, let me pose a question. If you people can unmute yourself and respond to this question. We are living in troubled times. We are living in pandemic moments, anxious moments. So the question for you is this: what is the crying need during pandemic times on this planet Earth? I repeat, what is the greatest need that the entire world needs right now? Is it sanitizers? Is it masks? Is it vaccination? What do you think is the biggest need?
Being hopeful and positive.
Okay, a mindset. What else? There's only one person listening to me. Okay, fantastic. Huh? Money, very important. Money is relevant at every time, at all times.
To sustain.
To sustain. Okay. Nobody's talking about material possessions at all. Nobody's talking about things like, usually when I pose these questions, people say, okay, we need sanitizers the most, we need the vaccinations the most. But let me tell you something. What the world needs right now is you. That's right. The world needs the best version of you. Now, years ago, I heard this beautiful thought. In Africa, every day in the morning, a deer wakes up and it tells itself, if I don't run faster than the fastest lion, I will be dead and I will be in the meal plate of a pride of lions, for a pride of lions. Every day in the morning in Africa, a lion wakes up and tells itself, if I don't run faster than the slowest deer, then I will starve myself to death. My dear friends, it doesn't matter whether you're in Africa or in Asia. It doesn't matter whether you're a deer or a lion or a human being. What is more important is this: when you wake up in the morning, you need to start running. So what do you run from, or what do you run away from? That is going to be the core of whatever I'm going to discuss in the time-bound speech that I'm going to give. The first thing you need to run away from is danger. Today, a lot of people think it's really cool to be adventurous. It's really cool to be daring. I've seen a lot of people, they just go to public places and they take selfies. A friend of mine just called me up and he said, DJ, I want you to counsel this particular cousin of mine. I said, what happened to him? He said, oh, every once in a while, he belongs to this small city called Coimbatore. And in Coimbatore, I believe there's this roadside eat out joint where this man makes some extraordinary local recipe. So this guy goes every day and he tries to eat from there, and he takes a selfie and he posts it on his social media pages. It so happened that the man who was serving was tested positive, and he died. And this person, who was a carrier, went on to passing it on to his joint family. He passed it on to his old grandfather and grandmother, who were put in ICU, and from ICU they got transferred to the ventilators, and they couldn't make it. And today the father and mother have been tested positive and they are in the hospital. And this boy, after 15 days of quarantine, he seems to be tested negative and he's fine. But the boy is going through throes of depression where the entire world is blaming him, telling him, look, I don't think they would have probably got into such a mess if had not been for you. This boy was flirting with danger. He thought it was a dare, and he thought he'd accept the dare, just like probably any other millennial who thinks it's really cool to go ahead and romanticize with danger. The first thing to run away with is obviously danger. The second thing to run away with is negativity. There's something called the pigeon mindset. I don't know how many of you have seen pigeons or probably had pigeons in your windowsill or outside a balcony. Well, pigeons have a characteristic trait. They are known for droppings. When I was living in Mumbai for a while, I remember there was this particular window that was sealed. And I asked the landlord, why is that window sealed? Why is there a wooden barricade that goes ahead and seals it from any kind of ventilation coming in? And the man said, well, you wouldn't really like to know. And he took me to the balcony and he showed me on the other side. Well, there are a few pigeons that decided that it was their birthright, it was a territorial right in order to mess up the entire place. But there are a lot of people who believe that it's their territorial right or it's their birthright to drop negativity into you. Run away from them. I still remember when this pandemonium struck us, and the first 1 month, like everybody else, I was totally clueless. I was clueless as to how to go about doing my business, how to go about doing my craft, how to survive, how to sustain, how to adapt. And these were questions which everybody was grappling about, and I was no exception. Well, I thought to myself, okay, fine, here's a great opportunity. So why don't I set a target for myself? I said, okay, fine, I'm going to do 25 keynote addresses and motivational talks to at least 25 different countries. When I told it to a few of my friends, and they said, DJ, come on, DJ. The neighbor auntie is trying to do a webinar on how to make bourbon cakes and how to make Oreo cakes, and who's going to listen to you? And that is from a different country altogether. You must be a dreamer, you must be a fool, like John Lennon said, and you are the classical illustration of the same. Yes, it was difficult for me to get the first break, but I'm so glad to tell you that I started in the month of June, and as of now, I completed about 16 different countries. And next month, I will be speaking in Jordan and Lebanon. And in the month of November, 7th of November to be precise, for a leadership summit, I'll be the keynote speaker in London. So I think I should be crossing 19 countries by November, hopefully 25 by the end of this year, or by the time the lockdown is completely over and we are back to a state of normalcy. The negative people have just one job, dropping negativity into you, and they keep telling that you cannot do it. The more you are there with them, we are the sum total of 5 people that you're closest with, we become like them and we become cynical and we become absolutely negative. The third thing to run away with is stupidity. Well, I love this particular cartoon that I saw some time back. It said more people are going to die because of stupidity than of corona. Well, I think nothing more illustrates the sign of the times that we are living in. There are people doing such random things, stupid things that probably defies all kinds of explanation that can be given. So 3 things that you can run away from. Again, I reinforce: first is danger, second is stupidity, and the third is negativity. Okay, so what do you run towards? Okay, I have a simple trivia question for you. Just imagine you are invited for a dinner, and this is one of those classy dinners, and there are a lot of cup tables that are present across for dignitaries, and you are given the latitude of selecting whichever table that you'd like to sit in. Now, two options are presented to you. Option number 1 has an individual, and this individual is a teetotaler, a non-smoker, a one-woman man, a person who's a vegan, a person who's 100% disciplinarian, a person who's a perfectionist to the extent to which he wakes up early in the morning at 5 a.m. sharp. He goes through a rigorous exercise routine. He believes that yes, healthy body is a prerequisite to a healthy mind. He was in the army, he was a trained soldier, a general, and he's definitely worthy of emulation for all his personality traits. The second is a person sitting in another table. He is a drunkard, drinks every evening, a chain smoker, a person who is got no respect for the members of the opposite gender. Every lady that he sees, he goes about flirting with them. He goes about trying to talk to them in a sleazy fashion. He's a non-vegetarian. I'm not saying non-vegetarians are bad. I'm a non-vegetarian myself. But he doesn't have any control or regulation with regard to his dietary habits. He just doesn't exercise, and he's a born capitalist. All he thinks of is how can I make more money. Now, given a choice, which table would you like to sit under? Obviously, I think if you're like most people, you'd like to sit with the person who belongs to the first table. Now, if I were to disclose the names of these two individuals and give you a small backdrop of both the individuals, maybe your choice could probably differ. The first table has a person who was a general, a disciplinarian, a perfectionist, a teetotaler, a one-man woman, who goes by the name Adolf Hitler. And the second table has a person was a born capitalist, has no respect or regard for his own body or for other people. He's a selfish, brutally selfish person. And his name is Oskar Schindler. For those of you who do not know Oskar Schindler was a person who was a contemporary of Adolf Hitler, and he went on to saving the lives of 1,100 people. Recently, like most of you, I was binge watching a lot of movies, and I got aligned to a lot of classics. And I was watching this timeless classic, Schindler's List, directed by the master, Steven Spielberg himself. As I was watching this movie, I love this one scene. Towards the end of the movie, Oskar Schindler, played beautifully by Liam Neeson, looks at the entire audience and he says, I'm sorry, I could have done more. If only I had not wasted my time, my energy, and my money on the things that were just indulgence for me, I would have probably sold more. He looks at the ring in his hand and says, for this one ring, I could have possibly saved the life of another person. And for the car of mine, I could have probably saved the lives of 100 more. Don't you think that's a beautiful question that we need to ask ourselves in these troubled times? Can I have done more? I could have done more is probably a right mindset for us to probably emulate in these troubled times. Think about it. There's so much that you can possibly do. So the one thing that you need to run towards is run towards a better version of yourself. Run towards a better version of yourself, a better version even in troubled times that teaches people to adapt itself, that teaches people to be happy, to be merry, to be content, to be minimalistic, and yet to live life not in a complaining mode, but in a progressive mode. Because it was Stephen Covey, he said, true growth or true progress happens when a person stops complaining, takes responsibility, adapts himself, and starts moving. And I think when you get into that particular mindset, you're automatically elevating yourself to that state of yours, which is a better version of yourself. The second thing that you can move towards is moving towards, just like a lion that chases its particular target, you can move towards a cause. I gave a TED talk some time back, and in that TED talk, I titled it as Dreams Are Overrated. It is a very controversial speech because as a motivational speaker, my job is to inspire people, to drive people towards realizing their dreams. But in my talk, I went about talking about something that is greater than dreams, and that is a cause. And I met an individual who was the epitome of a person who embraced a cause. His name was Aditya Tiwari. Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old male who wanted to adopt a child, a male 3-year-old boy. Well, there's nothing great about it. You may say, oh my God, come on, so many people want to adopt, so what's so great about it? Well, Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old single male who wanted to adopt a 3-year-old boy. Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old single male who wanted to adopt a 3-year-old boy who had Down syndrome. You can again say, oh, there's so many children suffering from Down syndrome. It's probably a pathetic state. of affairs, especially for children to contract it. But then so many children with Down syndrome are getting adopted. Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old male who wanted to adopt a 3-year-old boy with Down syndrome with a hole in his heart. It really crushes you to know that children of 3 years have a hole in their heart. What is even more ironic is to know that a lot of leaders have hole in their head and they don't even know about it. Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old male who wanted to adopt a 3-year-old boy with a hole in his heart, who was suffering from Down syndrome and was met with extreme resistance from his parents and from the adoption agencies because his parents thought that he would never get married, and the adoption agencies thought that he would never make a good parent because he didn't have any prior experience for the same. But the real kicker is this. Aditya Tiwari was a 25-year-old single male who wanted to adopt a 3-year-old boy with Down syndrome with a hole in his heart, met with resistance from the adoption agencies and from his own parents at a time when the law of the land stated that a single male cannot adopt a child before reaching the age of 30. So what does Aditya Tiwari do? He goes about challenging the law of the land. He writes to the Prime Minister's office. He writes to the Ministry of Child and Family Welfare Department. He writes to all the lobbying bodies. He goes all the way to New Delhi and he campaigns against this particular law, which he considers to be unfair. And he ensures that the law of the land is changed. So Aditya Tiwari becomes the first 25-year-old male, single male, to have adopted a child with Down syndrome with a hole in his heart, met with rejection from the certifying bodies and from his own parents at a time when the entire nation or the law of the land was against a person below 30 years to adopting a child. And he went about doing that because he believed in the cause of saving the life of a child, of filling the hole in the heart of a child with hope, with love, with compassion, and most importantly, with a family. That is what it means by embracing a cause. A cause is always something that is greater than you. It is something that is totally greater than you. It is not about you anymore. It is about another person. And I think these are trying times when it's time for us to embrace a cause. So my dear friends, in summary, I just like to tell you, run away from negativity, run away from stupidity, run away from danger. Be more sensible, run towards a better version of yourself, and run towards a cause that is greater than yourself. I love the story that the Irish say. There's a man who died and he went to the gates of heaven and he knocked the gates of heaven. St. Peter looked at him and said, so you want to enter into the gates of heaven? Through the gates of heaven into paradise? And the man said, yes, but of course. And St. Peter looked at him and said, so where are your scars? And the man said, what scars are you talking about? I don't have any. And St. Peter laughed at him and he said, you didn't have anything in your life worth fighting for? My dear friends, it is my hope, my wish, and my dream that all of you and all of us do find something worthy to fight for, a cause that is greater than our own selves, that leads us towards a better version of ourselves. And when we discover that particular cause, the entire world would have rediscovered fire for the second time. And it is again my hope, my vision, my prayer that this particular, the wisdom that emanates from this particular light leads us to a place where the mind is without fear, where the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where words emanate from the depths of truth, where the world is not broken into narrow domestic walls, where the clear stream of reason does not lose its way in the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into that heaven of freedom. My Father, let my country, let my continent, let my world awaken on this, the 28th of August, 2020. Over to you, Usman.
Very well said, Mr. Justin. Thank you so much for the thank you so much for those motivational words. I'm sure you have inspired everyone who is listening to you. like you rightly said, it is not important that you need to be the fastest, the smartest, the intelligent of all, but what you need to be is courageous and bold to stick on to your, uh, you know, uh, goals and be focused. And it is the time to identify the stronger you and emerge as a stronger version of yourself. So it is rightly said. You pointed out three important factors. Which you said that we need to be away from these three. That is to run away from the danger, keep yourself from negativity, and in fact the stupidity as well. Because we've heard a lot of things, during this pandemic. Few things were like acceptable, few unacceptable. People were falling prey to a lot of stupidity in terms of using healthcare, or going out of their ways to protect themselves. Maybe it is a time for us, all of us, to stay motivated and be courageous and be hopeful that this too shall pass very soon. And yeah, very important talk amidst this pandemic. It was so nice to hear those motivational and inspiring words from you, DJ. So I just probably would ask you a few more questions before we thank you for joining us today. Uh, how do you stay so motivated? What is the secret, and what are the three important factors would you want to share it with the audience or the participants today who are listening to you? How can we stay motivated all the time? Though you've told that you need to be away from negativity, you've told us what we shouldn't do and avoid, but other than that, so what do you do, generally to keep yourselves charged this way?
Okay, early in life, I was told the story, which I'm sure all of you have heard, a story about a Zen master and a small bowl of water or tea that was served by his master. Right, so Zen students, a Zen student went to a master and he said, "I want to learn the art of Zen." And the master said, gave him a cup, and he started pouring tea into it. The contents of the cup started overflowing, and the student said, "Stop." And the master said, "Yes, I want you to also empty whatever you have in your mind so that you can have an empty cup through which I can actually pour my wisdom into it." So early in life, I was told that as a student, you need to go with an empty cup. But when I became a motivational speaker, I realized the contrary was true. When you are a motivational speaker, your cup should be always full. As a matter of fact, it should be overflowing always, and that which overflows as your passion, as your motivation, as your conviction tries to have a rub off on others. It has a spillover on everybody else. So I try to feed myself, and I personally believe every motivational speaker needs motivation the most. So I think there are a lot of jokes on that. I wouldn't like to probably look at it in a frivolous fashion. So I try to imbibe myself by trying to reach out to as many people as possible. And I keep telling this to people in every forum that I probably address. I say, if you meet an interesting person, it could be anyone. It could be probably the vegetable cart vendor. It could be probably the lady who pushes the garbage truck. It could be anyone. If you probably have an inspirational story, could you give me an opportunity to have a dialogue with that individual? Well, the more you meet more people who live inspirational lives, the more you're again overflowing in inspiration and motivation. The second thing is, yes, I read a lot. I love this one line that Robin Sharma said in one of his tweets some time ago. He said, "The quality of your life 5 years from now will be changed by the books you read and the people you meet." Now, I had a small rejoinder to that line, and I say this: the quality of your life 5 years from now will be immensely changed by the books you read, the people you meet, the thoughts you think, and the ideas you conceive, or the dreams you aspire for. So I think putting it all together, so I have some lofty aspirations and lofty dreams. Some of them may be seemingly insignificant or probably seemingly impossible also. But it's good to aspire for something that is greater than yourself. So that is the second thing. And the third thing is very simple. I look at the worst case scenario. What are the worst things that could happen? Probably I could die. Accept it. And if you're able to accept the impossible, there's nothing that life can possibly shock you in. So I think three things that I go ahead and do. The first thing, overwhelm myself with too much of motivation, and there's no such thing as too much motivation. If you have too much, yes, it tries to have a spillover effect on others. Second is probably reach out to more people through books, through meeting them, and by the thoughts you think and the dreams you conceive. And the third thing, obviously, I think if you are to stay in the right mindset, yes, you're there.
Well, very well said, DJ. And last question.
Sure.
How did you explore so many facets in your career? You've been a motivational speaker. I see you as a corporate trainer. You are a filmmaker as well. So how did you expand this horizon? So what does it take to be someone like that? So maybe a message for students.
Okay, fine. I think I see a lot of renowned people out there, like Syed has just walked in, a good friend of mine. I think he's more prolific than I am. I think he's today a politician, a spokesperson, an anchor, a motivational speaker, social activist, a lot of things. So I think it's not too difficult. I mean, I think it's the way you look at it, you know. So a lot of times people, I think, just focus on just one facet of themselves. Now, yesterday I was actually in a webinar where a person was talking about design thinking. Now, in design thinking, there are two kinds of thinkers. There is the I thinker. The I thinker is a very left-brain thinker and a person who just thinks about going through life in a very logical, sequential, and a very organized manner. And the second is a person who's both an artist and a scientist put together. Right? Leonardo da Vinci called it as the whole brain syndrome. Today, Daniel Pick has also written a book called The Whole Mind. So, and that is called the T thinker. The T thinker is a person who takes everything, who takes just about everything. Like, say, for instance, he just gathers ideas from the birds and bees, like Leonardo da Vinci does. He probably takes an idea from the bathtub, like Archimedes did. And a simple example, I mean, there was a need for making a bullet train, the fastest bullet train. But the problem was when the bullet train was getting made, the chief architect decided to discount one important facet, and that is called the tunnel boom. Now, a tunnel boom is something where if a train, the bullet train at that particular speed gets inside a tunnel, because there's a compression of air, because the train is occupying a vast majority of the space that is present, there, when it comes out, there is a huge booming sound, and that is against the decibel levels that is prescribed by the corporation. So obviously they had a challenge. And the chief architect, the engineer, the design engineer, decided to take a break. He decided to go outside his domain of engineering. And in the weekends, he would just observe a lot of birds. He had a passion for bird watching. And he realized there was this particular bird called the kingfisher. And the kingfisher, every time it dived into the water, it would go so deep, and yet there would not be a single splash of water. The surface of the water would still remain calm. And he said, now there's a science that we're missing out over here. Now, how is it that it can do? Obviously, I think when a bird is diving deep down and taking a fish and flying back into the air, there has to be some splash and there has to be some commotion, ripples, whatever. So he found that the key was when the bird dived in, the beak was the one that went in first. So he decided to create the nozzle of this bullet train, which looked exactly like a kingfisher. A skeleton of a kingfisher was taken and it was replicated into a prototype, and a bullet train was made. So I personally believe that you can be many things to many people if you can possibly learn to use both the left brain and the right brain. And that is exactly what I've done. If you try and see in everything that I've done, the common thread that has been tying everything is communication and creativity. That's it. The expressions have been in the form of speaking, it's been in theater, it has been in the film medium, and it's been in different forms. The medium was different, but I think the approach and the craft of the discipline was just the same.
Great. The final takeaway for me or for everybody who is listening to us today is consume what is required, whether it is food or the news, right? With that note, thank you so much, DJ, for joining us today, and it was real pleasure and honor to have you and listen to the kind words that you've been sharing.